Morning, everybody. Welcome to this Friday's webinar from Alika Digital. It's myself, Anne Stanley, this morning, and Holly Kelly. Good morning, Holly.
Good morning.
Holly's going to introduce herself, but if you haven't met Holly before, she's head of paid media, and she's going to be talking about brand awareness activities, which is a really interesting subject because it has all sorts of other synergistic effects, which is great. You should be able to get the handouts top right. And if you're watching this on video, we're going to do a poll first of all, and then I'm going to pass over to Holly. So let's dive straight in with the poll. It's only one simple one today. What paid advertising or brand campaigns are you currently running? And this choice is, you should be able to see that now. I'm currently not working, or I work for a company that does not use paid media. So this is digital advertising, such as paid search, paid social, paid display. We do use paid media, but mainly for sales and leads. We call that performance marketing. We've occasionally used it. And what I mean by that, we've occasionally used brand campaigns. We're big fans and have an allocated budget for brand campaigns. Okay, so at the moment, we haven't got very many replies yet. We've got quite a mix of audiences that come and join us every week. So we've got a few regulars that come in pretty much every week. Then we've got all of our, a lot of our learners from the DMI course that we do. And then we have people that pop in. So just over half is they're not currently working for anybody that's doing paid media. Then the next couple are evenly split, but there's only one person says they're big fans and have an allocated budget, and that might even be somebody from us. Okay, so on that, I think it's changing around a little bit. I think definitely we've got quite a few people that are not doing any paid media, which I guess means you're going to have to make sure you cover the basics, which I know you will. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to disappear and pass over to Holly. If you've got any questions, I will try and answer them. But if not, we'll have a Q&A at the end. So good luck, Holly. See you in a bit.
Bye. Okay, good morning, everybody. So my talk today is all about how you can build a bigger sales pipeline through brand awareness activity, and also one of the key elements of brand awareness and why a lot of businesses tend not to run it so much is all around kind of the measurement side of it, and how can you actually see that it's doing anything for your business. So we're going to have a look at that as well. In terms of myself, so I have been in the industry around 10 years, and I've been with Anika 9.5 of those 10 years. I specialise in PPC and more specifically on the paid search side of things, but I do cover kind of a broad mix of paid media channels. And like Anne mentioned, I currently lead the paid media team at Anika. I am also a guest author for a few publications, so Search Engine Land and also PPC Hero now. And this year I finally entered the speaker circuit for the first time. So I spoke at PPC Live, and I've got a talk going live on AdWorld Prime as well. So you might see me around a little bit more than I have been in the past. In terms of what you'll take away today, so we're going to go through the importance of brand awareness and what it means for your long-term growth, the tactics and the platforms and campaigns that you can use for brand awareness, and then also different tools and ways that you can measure the impact of your awareness activity. So, brand awareness, why is it so important? When we talk about brand awareness, it's all about any individual being able to recall and recognize your brand. Now, that might be that they're able to recall the name of your brand, that they become familiar with your products and services. So if you say, oh, I need a new washing machine, your brand is the one that comes to mind. It's also about the awareness of your brand image and tone. So whether that's kind of things like colors, audio, anything like that, your logos, just seeing a visual and being able to say, I know who that brand is. And then also building positive recognition, because whilst brand awareness, when we do it for ourselves, the aim is to build, you know, awareness of your own brand and kind of that positive, there is also the flip side of that, when you get negative brand awareness, and that might be in things like the press and stuff as well. So definitely all about building that positive recognition. And, you know, if you think about negative examples of where actually there's a lot of awareness around brands, but actually it's not all that great awareness. You can think of things like, you know, Victoria's Secrets and Body Image, or McDonald's with the Super Size Me documentary. So there are two sides to the brand awareness story, and we're going to focus on how you can build positive recognition. So brand awareness, it's very, very often seen as a vanity marketing metric. You know, you're just putting ads out there and hoping that people will respond to them. But it doesn't actually have to be like that. And it really does hold enormous importance for the long-term growth of any business, because you need to expand the pool of customers or potential customers that are not only aware of your brand, but also aware of your products and services as well. So if you just rely on the users and existing customers that already know of your brand, then you only have a finite amount of potential customers that are going to buy from your brand. So awareness helps your business to grow. And it can also help to increase, you know, the loyalty and retention of your existing customers. So overall, it can run as a complement to performance marketing. They don't have to run independently of each other. And really, they actually shouldn't, because when we go into the measurement side of things, we'll talk about how the two can kind of tie together from a measurement perspective. In terms of the journey of brand awareness, so the first stage is complete unawareness. You know, the user is not familiar with the brand. They've not come across your business previously. And these are the users that we're trying to move into an awareness stage. Now, when a user gets to the first stage of awareness, they are, you know, they're aware that a business exists. They don't have an immediate recognition or association of the brand in any particular way, though. So they've just heard of the brand. But if they saw your logo, if they saw a specific color set or anything like that, they wouldn't necessarily be like, and associate your brand to that icon. As you move through, you get to a point of recognition, and this is where a user can identify a brand by either a visual or an audio element, and that might be a name, a logo, could be a tagline or a color palette. So they are familiar with your brand, and they can also recognize your brand if they see it out and about. The next stage is brand recall, and this is when a user can not only recognize your brand, but they can also recall it without any visual or audio prompt. So if they were to think, I need a new pair of trainers, they would think immediately, I know, I've seen these at this shop. I'm going to go there and I'm going to have a look there. So this is really, for most brands, the overall aim of developing brand awareness. And this is where you want to get to. For some, and this is really for the national, really big brands, you get to a point of brand dominance. And when you get to a point of brand dominance, this is, you would become the first brand that a user thinks of in relation to a specific product. So if you think about Hoovers, you might immediately go to Dyson. If you think about fizzy drinks, you might go to Coca-Cola, or you might go to Pepsi. Most of the time, there's only one that is dominant, but there might be two or three. But very, very rarely, you know, is it going to be like a small brand that gets to a point of dominance. But it's usually those kind of big household names. So for most businesses, it's about getting to that recall stage and definitely getting to kind of recognition, so that a user is familiar with your imagery, your icons, your logos, etc. So through brand awareness, you can expand your audience. You can go out and you can find new users who haven't yet come across your brand. They've not heard of your brand. And this really helps to cultivate new customers. So like I say, without brand awareness, you've got a finite amount of people that you can actually reach with your brand that have heard of your brand. So you're going to get to a point where you are fatiguing that audience, you've exhausted that audience, and you need new customers. So brand awareness helps you to find these users. It also helps you to foster trust. A poll or survey, shall I say, through Sprout Social suggests that 77% of consumers prefer shopping with brands that they follow already on social media. So that signifies the importance of, you know, building that trust and actually cementing yourself before the user even shops with you. So it's about building that presence, building that awareness, and developing a relationship with your potential customers. And you can do that in different ways, whether it's following, whether it's sharing user-generated content. We'll go through some kind of examples of how you can start to build that trust with users as well. It helps you to build brand association. So it's all about creating consistent branding. So you can be present in a lot of places, but if your brand is not consistent, then a user doesn't build that association with it being your brand. So making sure, you know, things like your logos, your colors, things like sounds, they're all consistent across different devices, different platforms, different channels. And, you know, if you are running adverts on, say, Page Social, for example, that the user doesn't see one visual on your ad and then they get to your landing page on your website and it's a completely different experience. So it's all about building that association, because that's what connects the user to your brand. And ultimately, awareness is all about building for brand longevity. So recognition is going to be a key purchasing factor. And like we say, building and fostering that trust is going to be really, really important. And what you do in the short term. So whilst you might look at brand awareness activity and you look at the results and you're like, well, it's not driving me any leads, it's not driving me any sales. Actually, it's about looking at brand awareness in the long-term results and what that means for the number of people that are searching for your brand and how users are finding your brand online. If we think about some examples of brand association, so you've got things like slogans and taglines. So if you hear "just do it," if you hear "the happiest place on earth," and kind of "it's finger licking good," they're great, and "you're not you when you're hungry," I'm sure most of you can identify where all of these slogans and taglines and the brands that they're associated to. So we've got Nike, we've got Disneyland, we've got Frosties, KFC and Snickers. So it doesn't have to just be things like logos. It doesn't have to just be your brand name. You can start to build different identities for your brand and ingrain these within kind of the activity that you do. It can also be things like visual. So whether that's logos, icons, different colors. So everybody's going to know if you see the golden arches, you know that it's going to be a McDonald's and you know the Colonel's face. But then it's things like colors. So if you see that iconic blue and yellow, what store do you associate this to? And then that really kind of deep purple, we know that that's Cadbury's. So it's about building this. And this doesn't happen overnight. This is something that is built through kind of constant recognition and developing that awareness so that a user is familiar and associates your brand with each of these elements. And then finally, there's things like audios. So as we get near Christmas and we hear the holidays are coming, jump onto the TV or a radio advert, I definitely associate this and know what brand that is associated to. And then you've got some older ones like In the Air, Tonight, the Phil Collins, and Heard It Through the Grapevine, which was widely associated with Levi's way back when. So it doesn't have to be all visual. It can be audio related as well. And again, that's about building that over time and creating kind of memorable instances of use with those. But there are occasions where association doesn't always equal dominance. So you can have really, really great brand awareness and really, really great product association, but you might not hold that brand dominance. So if we think about vacuum cleaners, actually, particularly in the UK, a lot of people will just say, I'm going to put the Hoover around. They don't call it a vacuum cleaner. Actually, Hoover is the brand name. But if you think about that kind of space, actually Dyson, Shark, brands like that, they are the dominant brands within that space. So association doesn't always equal dominance, and your brand name can become interchangeable with the product itself in some instances. So how do we look to increase brand awareness? So there's a few different strategies that you can deploy, but it's all about making your brand visible. And it needs to not just be visible to anybody and everybody, because, you know, unless you're a fast moving consumer good, like a fizzy drink or a chocolate bar or something like that, where actually you're probably relevant to the majority of the population, actually you still want to build awareness to a relevant audience across the web. And that is where paid media can really kind of help. So unlike, you know, traditional media and slapping a billboard up and things like that and building awareness through that means, actually paid media still allows you to be really, really targeted and select, you know, the audiences that you are building your awareness with. So when you come to plan what brand awareness activity you're going to run, it's about selecting the right platforms. So, you know, where are your audiences hanging out online? What are their online habits? What is their online behavior? And understanding which are the right platforms for them. And that helps you to get the media mix right. And with awareness, whilst, you know, you can run it on one platform, it is better if you're building that awareness across multiple touch points over the web. But, you know, depending on your budgets, if you're just starting out on your path to, you know, testing the waters with some brand awareness campaigns, then actually selecting the platform that's got the most of your relevant audience in is going to be the first place to start. And then once you see that it's working, you can expand into other channels then as well. But if you think about, you know, who your audience is, Meta's probably got the biggest reach between its platforms, between Facebook and Instagram. But, you know, if you wanted to reach that kind of younger under 30s audience, then actually is TikTok the right platform for you? So understand where your customers, well, potential customers are, and, you know, build a profile of them and what is their online behavior. You can also get involved, you know, with trending topics. So every now and again, something trending will pop up and you'll see a storm on social media. And that's a great way of getting your brand kind of involved. Obviously, be cautious that it aligns with, you know, your brand identity and who you are as a brand, but that's another way to kind of get involved. Depending on your business, you also want to invest in the right resources. You know, particularly if you're B2B, what does brand awareness look like for you? It's about very often, you know, getting the right kind of white papers, blogs, resources, those kind of things, and using those to build awareness and share insight, share and educate the audience. So getting the right resources for a consumer B2C brand, it might be about getting, you know, user generated content and those kind of angles, and investing in those resources as well. And like I say, using a multi-channel approach is going to get you the most brand awareness, and it's going to increase that recognition a lot faster. Just an example of, you know, this is a very, very big example of where different brands jump on the trends. So the whole Colin the Caterpillar and Cuthbert the Caterpillar battle that rattled on a couple of years back now. But it started out between Marks and Spencer's and Aldi, but all of the supermarkets in the end were getting involved, as were various other brands across the web. So it's looking at trends, identifying and keeping your finger, you know, on the pulse. How can we have a take on this? And it doesn't have to be just like social media trends like this. It could be things happening in the news and other scenarios as well. But keeping your finger on that and joining your team together. So if you're making, you know, comments from like a PR perspective, is there something that you can use from that and tying that back into, you know, what you're doing on your social channels, for example? So jumping on trends is a great way to get, you know, online engagement and getting people kind of engaging with your brand and becoming more familiar with who you are. One of the very key things that I've already touched on is making sure that you are consistent with what you do. So the success of brand awareness is always dependent on the user being able to recognize and associate your brand. So if your branding isn't consistent, if you're using different colors, different fonts, different brand personalities, and each of your channels is operating in a silo. So if you've got a different department running your social marketing, and then you've got another department on web, and they're not speaking to each other. And then over in PR, you've got another department that's using their own tone of voice. Then actually everything doesn't marry together, and it's not consistent, and the user's not able to associate your brand to any one particular thing because it's here, there, and everywhere, and it's jumping around. So it's really, really important that you're consistent across all of your channels. And one of the very, very important things is making sure that you actually brand your content. So if you're putting ads out, make sure that you have ownership of these ads. So these two ads here, one from Wix, one from B&Q. Very often in social, you're just scrolling. You're not really taking in necessarily always, the name and the logo here. Actually, it will be the picture that grabs your attention. Now, on the right, if you look at the B&Q, well, it might be a nice kitchen, but actually it's got no association. There's no branding at all within those imagery. So if that's all that's catching the user's attention, well, actually you might scroll, okay, that was a nice kitchen. I'm thinking about getting a new kitchen maybe. But when you come back, because it's not going to be something that you do immediately, a kitchen, particularly is a really considered purchase. So if you go away and then you've seen this ad and you thought, oh, that was a really nice ad. Well, actually, who was it? Where do I need to go to look for this kitchen? You don't know because the branding wasn't there. So as soon as the user goes away, that kitchen is no longer associated with B&Q. Whereas on the left, again, another nice kitchen, but we've got the branding there. So immediately that's the bit in the image that's kind of capturing and drawing your kind of eye. So make sure that, if you're putting stuff out on social, that you've got your brand in there somewhere, because brand awareness isn't brand awareness without the brand being present. So, and I think, we all too often fall into the trap of, well, the brand name and the logo is going to be there with it. But actually, that's very often not what catches the user's attention. So some good platforms to use for brand awareness. Social media is, the obvious one, and that is the one that's used in the paid media world most frequently. But you've also got other ones that can help you to get, larger exposures, but they're not always as targeted. So social media, really great for large exposure, but also getting very targeted and finding a very specific audience. Audio ads, on the other hand, are very wide and broad targeting. So, but again, they get you very large exposure. You can also go for contextual placement. So this is things like your display networks. So putting ads on third-party websites, or it might be video ads on YouTube, for example. Search advertising, whilst not traditionally associated with brand awareness, there are some techniques and approaches with search advertising that we can use for awareness that I'm going to go into. And then you've got your more traditional ones, so things like out of home and also like events, so things like sponsorship, stands, things like that. So there's lots and lots of great platforms. This is by no means an exhaustive list either, but these are kind of the main and most popular ones in terms of where you might develop brand awareness. So if we go into a couple of the channels, so first one, Meta ads. So Meta's got incredible reach, across the whole globe. And actually, in terms of its usership, you've got Facebook, which has got an aging audience, but you still have that kind of, 30 plus is, well, 20 plus to be fair, has still got great reach. But in addition to that, you've also got Instagram within that as well, which again has that kind of more younger and visual audience. So it depends what aligns with your brand. But generally, if we start with a social media channel, 9 times out of 10, it's Meta ads because it offers the most potential and it offers reach across the widest audiences. And there's a few campaign types that can help you reach different audiences and build this awareness. So you've got the traditional awareness campaign, and that's going to be focused on keeping users within the platform itself. So very traditional awareness, you're trying to get the user just eyeballs on the ad. You've also then got traffic and engagement. Now, these, whilst actually not specifically focused to awareness, often offer more value in terms of kind of your business. And it depends where the user is in that kind of awareness funnel. If they're unaware, or if they're getting towards that kind of recognition stage, you might actually want to start getting them to go to your website and engage with your content. Not necessarily to either fill out a form or purchase or anything like that, but you might want to get them to your website to, download a white paper. So you're still kind of building that awareness and building that relationship with the potential customer, but they're not at that point of conversion yet. So you can also use traffic, and then engagement is a great way to get that interaction still within the ad platform itself. So still within Meta, but you get that interaction with the user. So they start to actually engage, and you know that your ad is resonating with the right audience. So awareness, whilst it's in platform and it's focused on, getting eyeballs, all you know is that the ad was delivered to that audience. Whereas through traffic and engagement, you can actually start to see, well, actually, I'm reaching the right audience because they're engaged with my ad. So those two offer a little bit more in terms of that measurement side of things. Meta also does have the option for brand and conversion lift studies. However, they do have a minimum spend attached. I think it's in the tens of thousands. So it's only going to be applicable to, big budget brands, but they do offer that if that does fall into yourself. Another great one for awareness is YouTube ads, and the reach and exposure for YouTube just keeps getting bigger. So YouTube, is now on smart TVs. So the reach of YouTube is expanding to new devices all the time. And actually, in terms of video views, whilst TikTok is on the absolute rise, definitely, YouTube offers, at the moment, still unrivaled reach for video views, and it's really, really cheap traffic, really, really cheap awareness. So a cost per view on YouTube can be as low as 1 pence. So 1 pence to get a user to see your ad. And a view on YouTube only triggers if the user watches either 30 seconds of the ad or they engage with the ad in some way. I'm sure many of you have been on YouTube and you've got this skip after 5 seconds on those ones that run before or after your main video. If a user skips the ad, you don't pay for that interaction, and you don't pay for that view. So not only do you get all of this great reach and awareness, you also get a lot of it for free. Because even if you can get a good message through in those first 5 seconds, you get that and you don't have to pay for it if the user skips. So it also has really unique targeting opportunities. So it pulls data from Google search as well. So you can interact with users that are searching for specific products or services in Google. So it has unrivaled targeting, unrivaled reach, and it's really, really great with brand awareness. And you can also pair it with Google search advertising to track the impact of your activities. So if you run an awareness campaign in YouTube, what you can do is you can create a remarketing audience. So people who are viewing your videos. And then when these users go into Google and either search for your brand or search for your product or service, you can deliver a search ad to them. And that just gives you the insight of, well, actually, I'm reaching the right audience. And then they're coming away and they are searching for my brand, or I know that I'm reaching the right audience because they're coming in, they're searching for the product. So it gives you that ability to tie the activity together. And that's just one of the measurement strategies that you can use. Now, search ads, like I say, typically it is associated with mid to bottom of funnel activity. So when you think about search ads, the users that are on there, they generally have higher intent, but it can also support in building awareness. So particularly tactics that you can deploy. So catering to pre-positioned searches. So how do I, when is, why, things like that, the what's. So all of the question-based searches where a user is just kind of researching and trying to find information. So it can help with those searches. With these ones, unlike what you typically use for your bottom of funnel activity, where either you might be going to a product or category page, something like that, or straight to kind of a lead form page. In these instances, you need to have that collateral prepared, whether that's a blog article, like we say, a white paper, anything like that, a case study. You need that kind of higher funnel collateral to support that activity. So really, really consider what landing page am I going to take these users to if you do deploy that. They've also then you've got competitor terms. So this is another angle, and it's I guess a widely contested angle of whether people like to do it or not, and it's all personal preference. So we see some good results from competitor activity, but it really depends on you and your brand. So bidding on your competitors' brand names is very much a strategy that is used widely across paid media. And there are swings and roundabouts in terms of whether it's for you or not. And that comes down to, you know, how competitive your industry is. If you were to bid on your competitors' brand terms, that might cause retaliation in them bidding on your brand term. And it depends on, you know, the size of your competitors as well. So can you take that hit from them bidding on your terms? Or are they already bidding on your terms and are you doing the retaliatory bid? But it can open kind of that awareness activity up, and you can limit it to specific terms. So it might be people that are specifically searching for alternatives or reviews or things like that. And it's a good way to kind of jump in higher up the funnel, but still build awareness of your own brand, because the user's searching for, you know, they're interested in your product or your service, but they've just not associated that with yourself yet. Pinterest ads is another one that offers really great reach, and actually Pinterest is better for those kind of higher funnel activity and users. So typically speaking, Pinterest, it falls into that kind of inspirational, aspirational category. Users on Pinterest are researching and looking for inspiration on, you know, whether it's home, garden, beauty, fitness, things like that. And actually it's predominantly a research platform. So it does come at the start of a user's journey. That's not to say it doesn't convert, you know, in some instances, but it does lend itself to brand awareness. And if you can be there in that kind of initial research stage, that's going to help cement your brand when the user progresses. And some of the industries and categories that it kind of spans, so like the home improvements, things like weddings, they do have a longer buying cycle, whereas things like the fitness, that might be a much quicker purchase. So really depends on kind of your product and your brand, but definitely it sits and it lends itself to that brand awareness. Then we've got Spotify ads. So this is kind of obviously an audio option, and actually it offers a different approach to the traditional kind of visual side of paid media. But it does have, I will say, limited direct measurement and very broad targeting categories. But it's really great if you want to reach, you know, a wider audience. So it's suited better for B2C that have got, you know, that wider product or service. But it does have, you know, business targeting options. So it's got a business interest category, and you can target either, you know, based on interest or based on the type of music and genres that a user is listening to. They have also released a podcast targeting or advert. So you can target if you run a podcast, you can target your podcast. So there's different kind of means in which you can use Spotify ads, and they are audio based, but you can support them with visuals as well. But generally speaking, Spotify ads is another fairly cheap platform in terms of kind of entry levels. So it's a good one to kind of test that kind of wider reach for brand awareness. With brand awareness ads, generally you need to introduce your brand and you need to introduce the problems that it can solve. So when you first come across a brand, you want to know, you know, who is the brand and what problem is it going to solve for me? And you need to display the right information if you're going to leave that kind of lasting impression. So some angles for building brand awareness, and by no means, again, is this an exhaustive list, but it could be things like competitions. So competitions are a really great way of getting engagement. So we're running one at the moment for a competition, and Martin, who's running it, they've already exceeded the amount of entries that they targeted for the whole campaign. So, and it's got another, wow, another month, well, 3 weeks or so to run. So it's really, really great to get that kind of engagement with your ads. But, you know, competitions is not going to be applicable to everybody. But you've also got things like user-generated content. So if you do get images and you do get tagged across social media, or you might offer an incentive at the point of after the point of sale to users to send in their imagery to you. This is great content, whether it's sharing the other users' posts or reusing that content in your own social media as well. And that's really great to get that kind of social proof that's coming in there below as well. And user-generated content is one version of that. But with social proof as well, you can also share, you know, reviews, testimonials, things like that. Comparisons. So your product, your service versus your competitors. What is better about, you know, your product? So for whether, you know, for some like SaaS software and things like that, G2 offer these kind of comparisons, and these actually work, you know, really well. You can embed them in landing pages, or you can, you know, call them out directly within your ad and do these comparisons. Obviously, with things like comparisons, do be careful that it shines, you know, shines a light on you and not your competitors. So you don't want to raise too much awareness of your competitors, but it is a good one to kind of get in there, particularly for users that are searching for your competitors, like we mentioned on the search advertising. Anything kind of aspirational, lifestyle, things like social responsibility. So if you're doing like anything like charity related or anything like that, that's really good content to kind of share that shows the values and ideations of your brand rather than just trying to sell. Because with awareness, it's not about the sale, it's about building your brand persona and your, you know, your brand values and seeing how they align to the users. Trending topics, which we've already spoke about, and then how-tos and also re-education. So if there has been, you know, potentially like bad press out there at the moment, so things like, you know, whether it's like the artificial grass that gets, you know, it does get bad press, but actually there's swings and roundabouts with everything. So it's about, you know, re-education, actually what are the benefits of having that, and looking at it from different angles and re-educating the users. And paid media through brand awareness can be a great way to do this. So you can flip the story and flip the narrative with it. So how do we measure the impact? So in terms of brand awareness, we want to use both quantitative and qualitative metrics to determine the success. And you want to do this over time. So it's not going to be something that's just going to be on instant and your sales just shoot up. That would be the ideal scenario, but it is going to take a bit of time, and you are going to need to track it over time as well. So before you set out, you want to benchmark your starting point. So, you know, how many brand searches are you getting? How many followers do you already have on Facebook, on X, on LinkedIn, whatever it might be? How many average engagements do you currently get? So what is your starting point? And then set up your measurement plan. So what are you trying to achieve? And how are you going to achieve it? What do you need to track? Is it brand searches? Is it website traffic overall? So is it the number of follower gains, the number of engagements on your social posts? So understanding, you know, same as you would with performance marketing, if you don't know your starting point and if you don't know what you're trying to track, then actually performance marketing is exactly the same. So if you set up your measurement plan, you know what you're trying to achieve through your brand awareness activity, you've got your starting point, then that's going to assist you in moving forward with your measurement plan. But you want to measure both the direct campaign itself. So, you know, if you're running a video campaign, how many video views are you getting? So how many people are you reaching? But then also its knock-on impact as well. And I'll go through some of those. So in terms of the ad campaign measurement, so this is the direct campaign performance, you're thinking about things like which of the creatives perform best. So if you're running any ad campaign, it's always advised that you have multiple creatives to allow for ad testing, so you can see where actually this visual resonates better or this messaging resonates better. So it's really important to have different creatives, but as part of your measurement, you want to understand, well, which creatives resonate and perform best, and it might be different in different channels and platforms. So measure it in each different campaign and each different audience as well. Also looking at things like which platforms has the highest reach and which platforms are giving you the most back for your money. So if you're running in multiple platforms, so if you've got video views on YouTube and you've got them on Facebook, and you're running those in kind of parallel with each other, which of those is getting you the most results, and do you need to pivot and adjust where your budget is allocated? Also, which platforms you know has the highest engagement, and are the campaigns inspiring action? So if you are running it as a traffic campaign, are users clicking through to the website, and are users downloading that PDF? Because whilst you're not going for that end conversion of a sale or a lead, actually there are some actions through brand awareness activity, like the downloads, like newsletter signups, like competition entries, that you can track to track those kind of micro engagements that are building that awareness over time. On the quantitative side, you want to look beyond just the campaign results and start looking at what the knock-on impact is. So firstly, looking at direct traffic. So these users end up on your site as a result of specifically entering your domain into the search bar. So you know that if you've launched brand awareness activity, and it's important to be able to isolate the brand awareness as the only change that occurred at this point. So you don't want to be running brand awareness at the same time as you're running like an email campaign, at the same time you're running various different kind of bits of activity. You want to be able to isolate and pinpoint what caused you know, the increase in users going direct to your website. But generally speaking, if you've launched brand awareness activity and, you know, over the course of the next 1 to 3 months, your direct visitors are kind of increasing over time, then it's a good indication that your marketing efforts are encouraging users to visit your website. And it means that actually they are already, you know, familiar with your brand at this point. So that's a good way to start to measure. You can also look at not just direct traffic, but overall site traffic. So what we very, very commonly see is that when you run multiple marketing efforts, whether that's through organic, paid, social, PR, if you run everything in conjunction with each other, overall, they all have a knock-on impact on each other, and it builds your brand visibility and it builds your website traffic. So tracking that overall site traffic is another way to see how engaged users are, and if you're getting them to visit and encouraging them to visit your website. I would definitely say some channels have more of an impact in driving website traffic than others. So, for example, Meta typically drives better traffic than a YouTube ad would, but also a display ad on the Google Display Network, they drive better traffic than some of the other channels would. So you need to understand, again, going back to the platforms that you're using and the user's behavior within those platforms. Are they inclined to leave that platform? So things like TikTok, a user doesn't want to leave TikTok. They're in TikTok for a reason, to absorb content. So thinking about how you position your message and your exposure. You can also track social engagements and social following. So like I say, so long as you've got your base point and you know where you started, you can also track, use tools like Sprout Social to help you keep track, and also to help you benchmark against your competitors' social growth. So is it, you know, is the overall industry growing, or specifically are people engaging more with your brand? And then finally, you can also look at the volume of brand searches. So you can do this in 2 different ways. You can do it through Search Console. So that's looking at your overall brand searches. And that gives you an indication of if your brand searches are going up and you've launched this brand awareness activity, it's a really, really stellar indication that your awareness and your recognition and the people searching for your brand is increasing as a direct impact of your awareness activity. So you can do it through Search Console. You can also do it via Google Ads and bidding on your own brand. In some instances, this is required to protect your brand presence. So if other competitors are bidding on your brand name, then actually it can be beneficial to run your own brand ads. It's not always in a company's mindset that they want to pay for their brand traffic. They think, you know, the mindset is we should get that traffic anyway, but actually you could be losing that traffic if competitors are there. So sometimes it's in your interest to bid on brand, and it also helps you to control that narrative and control the message that is put out through brand ads. So checking the number of brand searches, so you can do it through paid as well. And the additional benefit of doing it through paid is, like I say, you can control the message that goes across, but also what you can do is you can use remarketing. So you can build audience lists based off of people traffic or video views that have kind of engaged and been exposed to your brand awareness activity, and you can directly track how many of those are coming away and searching for your brand. So that's always a benefit, and it's a great way to test that awareness activity. On the qualitative side, you'll also want to look at kind of less tangible results, but things like brand uplift studies. So these can be created directly in the platform. They do require higher budget. So like I say, it runs into the tens of thousands that you need in order to run the specific brand uplift studies. But what it just means is that there is an audience that sees your ad, and then there's a holdout audience, and Google or Meta surveys both sets of audiences, and you can see the number of kind of uplifts of those that recall your brand that saw your ad versus those that recall it that didn't see your ad, and you can see kind of the difference. Outside of the official studies, though, you can also create your own. So you could create things like a geographical incrementality test, and this just means that you have a geographic holdout test. So you run specific brand awareness activity, say in one location. So you could run it in the East Midlands, or you could run it, say, in Leicester, and you can compare that to the locations that didn't see any awareness activity. And over time, what you can see is, well, actually, I run the awareness activity in Leicester and I'm seeing more leads, or I'm seeing more sales in Leicester than I am in the rest of the country, for example. So you can create your own incrementality uplift tests if you don't hit those kind of budget thresholds to do the ones in platform. You can also track the share of search. So this is tracking the volume of brand searches for you and also your top competitors each month. You can use different sources for this data. So I will say none of them are, 100% exact, but they do give good insight into whether the number of searches for your brand and your competitors' brands are growing. So tools like, it could be Keyword Planner, which is obviously a free tool. We also use a tool called SimilarWeb, but you can also use like SEMrush, SEO Monitor, things like that. But it's just about tracking how many searches are for your brand, how many searches are for each of your competitors. You could do your top 3, you could do your top 5 competitors, and you work that back out as a percentage, and you're trying to see whether the percentage of searches for your brand is increasing versus your competitors. And it's worked as a percentage just to factor in things like seasonality, where, December or November, if you're in kind of e-commerce, you might see big spikes in the number, but actually that just might be seasonality and not a growth in your brand. And then you can also set up brand mentions. This is through Google Alerts, and that just triggers any time that your brand is mentioned in like an article or across the web. And if you're getting more brand mentions, it just means, your exposure around your kind of brand online is kind of increasing as well. So it could be from press, third parties. You can also set up social listening through different tools as well, and that will track mentions across kind of the different social platforms of your brand, so where you're tagging. So different ways, less tangible, but definitely different ways in which you can track, and really kind of useful ways. So just to kind of elaborate on or show kind of some of those in a little bit more detail. So with Google, like I say, you can bid on brand, and once you've launched your awareness, it's all about making sure that you're capturing that increased demand. So bidding on brand, like I say, is a way of doing this to make sure that your competitors aren't kind of stealing those brand searches. You can measure the impact of your awareness activity through this. You can track brand searches from specific audiences. So like I say, if you use remarketing in conjunction, you can see, well, actually my video views is generating more brand searches than my meta traffic ads, for example. And then you can control the conversation and the messaging. So you can get, you know, a little bit more potentially cheeky, or what it might be with your ad copy to speak directly to this audience that is searching for your brand. Whereas if they just landed on your organic listing, that's pulled in automatically from Google. You've got no control as such over, you know, everything that's pulled in with that. So bidding on brand can be beneficial in multiple ways. This is just an example of share of search. I've taken energy drinks as the example. So I'm sure most people are aware, a year or two ago now, Prime energy drink burst onto the market, massive increase in their share of brand search. Everybody's searching, everybody wants a Prime drink, everybody wants to try it, super exclusive, really low quantity. But actually over time, what's happened is they've kind of just fizzled out. Their marketing efforts have kind of dwindled. Their availability actually has become more and more available. They're in more locations. You can get them from more retail stores. And the exclusivity of the drink kind of faded over time. So you can see how it tracks on the blue line there for the Prime energy drinks. The other two, so Red Bull and Monster, actually where Prime has started to decline, people have kind of reverted back to the others. So that's one way to track through share of search. Another option is Google Trends. So another trending product, the Stanley Cup. Every influencer under the sun has got their Stanley Cup going on. I would say at the moment, they're starting to dwindle off a little bit, as you can see.
I think I need one of those.
You need one of those?
Yeah, I'd be a very good influencer for a Stanley Cup, wouldn't I?
And Stanley, I've just caught on. you can take it to all your speaking events. You need the Annika Stanley Cup. Good trend for you to jump on. But yeah, so that spiked massively at the start. Well, end of last year, start of this year, that'll be about Christmas time. It has fallen off a bit, but you can see how that kind of trends over time. So you can track your brand trends for that over time as well. And then the Google Alerts, like I say, if you set up the Google Alerts for your brand, you can start to see and get kind of roundups, pings, alerts, anytime your brand is mentioned across kind of news articles, anything like that, third-party websites. So you'll get a notification when that occurs. So that can be really useful outside of brand awareness, particularly if you've got any kind of PR or anything like that going on. That can be really useful for that as well. So in conclusion, definitely the significance of brand awareness in conjunction with performance marketing strategy should not and cannot be overlooked. It is really, really crucial for building kind of that long-term growth. Performance marketing can't do it on its own. Performance marketing is, you know, it's demand capture. So you're capturing demand that is already out there. Awareness is all about demand generation. So you need to generate demand as well as capture demand to really, really kind of grow your business over time. So thank you for listening. I don't know if there were any questions, if you've answered them as we've gone through, but
no.
Yeah.
There's not too many questions. I mean, just a little bit of observation. I've been going to a lot of conferences and trying to speak quite a lot, and there was some data where they actually it was on a larger scale, but they were measuring the impact of brand on search traffic and PPC performance over time, and there was sort of like a step effect. So if you didn't do anything at all, you know, you just sort of grow it slowly. But every time you did a big brand campaign, and I think they think about, I can't remember, it's somewhere between 10 and 30%. If you spend that much on your budget overall, you'll get that incremental increase. Because otherwise, it's very expensive to bid on product phrases all the time. And if you can, people just search for you automatically, particularly if they go on your organic search and they don't click on your ad, then it's going to be a lot cheaper in the long term. So hence there's so many TV ads for things like insurance companies like compare the market and the meerkats, etc., because they can't afford to do loads and loads of PPC. So they want you to remember the brand, as Holly said earlier, rather than searching for the search terms. So it makes the whole thing a lot cheaper. So a lot of synergistic effects. So brilliant job. Did you want to add anything else? I was just going to get people to give you a little bit of love. Do like our reviews. So if any of you want to give Holly a review, I still haven't changed that graphic. I still need to change that graphic. And if any of you are in Google reviews, because that's the one that's a bit of a pain to do, but we haven't got as many Google reviews, so it's always nice if a couple of you could do a Google review as well. I think Gurpreet's off sick this morning, so I'm not sure who's doing the webinar next week. I don't know whether you know, Holly.
Not off the top of my head, no.
No, I can't remember either. I'm really sorry. But we'll send out another invite on Monday morning. Just to warn any of you, we're starting to organise some in-person events. So the first one is on the 12th of July in Leicester. So if any of you are local, we're going to start sort of spreading some of these events that we're doing. We're doing one at the LCB depot, which is a breakfast, and then a bit later on in the year, we're going to be doing some lunches, particularly for e-commerce retailers. And then we've also got our conference, which I'm trying to pin that down the date. It's going to be around Halloween, which is easy to remember. We will haunt you about it. Not as good as having a Stanley Cup, though. That's very impressive. But anyway, have a great weekend, guys. Thank you so much, Holly. Great presentation. Yeah, sorry, what did you say?
I just said thank you, everybody, for joining.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Thank you all for joining as well. And we'll see you next week. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.